Hello and welcome. My name is Joe Cooper with VMware Education, and in this video, we're going to show you how to upgrade your vCenter appliance version 6.5 or 6.7 to a vCenter 7 appliance. Now, in vCenter 7, we have deprecated, or VMware has deprecated, the topology that says that we're going to run vCenter with two virtual machines, that being a vCenter server virtual machine, as well as an external platform services controller virtual machine. So as a part of this demonstration, we're going to show you how the version 7 upgrade process will take these two virtual machines that do two different things and converge them into a single virtual appliances that takes on the entire job of running vCenter, as well as all of the platform services controller services. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to head over to VMware's website and download the vCenter Server Appliance Installer version 7.0. I'm going to go ahead and open that with Windows Explorer so that it actually mounts this ISO image. I'll navigate to the UI installer folder, find the version that is appropriate to me. I'm running Windows 10 here, so I'll go ahead and launch the Win32 installer, and there it is. And away we go. You might have seen an installer menu that looks like this before if you were using a recent version of vCenter, where we can install vCenter. We can upgrade an existing vCenter. That's what we're going to be doing here. We can migrate from a Windows vCenter to the Linux-based appliance, or we can restore from a backup. Let's go ahead and do this upgrade. And it's going to warn us or notify us a couple of times that this converge process will actually be taking place. We're going to go from two virtual machines to one VM that does both of these jobs. So let's go ahead and run through this first stage of deployments where we're going to build a brand new vCenter server. Okay. Now, yes, this is an upgrade. So in the second process, we're going to export the data from the old vCenter and import it into this new vCenter. Okay, a two-stage process. So let's go ahead and move on with stage 1, and we'll go through these 9 steps here. We'll accept the license agreement, and we'll connect to the source appliance. This is on vCenter 01.thecoopers.lan, and let me show you what this looks like here, okay? All right, so the first thing that you'll notice is that I have two virtual machines, the vCenter server appliance and the platform services controller. And what we're going to attempt to do here is create a third VM, power these off, and then take over the role of the combined two with a single vCenter appliance. And you can see this vCenter appliance, which I've deployed just for this demonstration. It's called vCenter 01.thecoopers.lan, which is my local home labs domain. Okay, so let's go back here, and we're going to connect to this vCenter 01 appliance. Okay. We'll hit the button that says connect to source. And it's going to ask us for some information here. Okay. So it asks us for the single sign-on username. The default LDAP domain for single sign-on server is called vSphere.local. When I deployed this, I changed it as not to interfere with the rest of my systems here. I called it lab.local. So let's give it the password for administrator at lab.local. And we'll also give it the password for our vCenter appliance itself, the root username and password. Now we're going to deploy it to an ESXi host or a vCenter. And rather than having the fully qualified domain name of a host here, I'm actually going to give it the IP address. We'll keep things simpler. We won't have to do any name resolution here. Now we'll give it the password for the root account on that ESXi host that I'm going to deploy it to. We'll accept the thumbprint and move on to the next step. Okay. It's warning us once again that this vCenter will be converged and upgraded to a vCenter server with an embedded platform services controller. Okay, now where are we going to deploy this? We're going to deploy it to that same ESXi host. And again, here is the password for the root account. Again, accept the thumbprint. And now we're going to start to build this new virtual appliance. This is vCenter Server Appliance version 7.0. Let's give it a virtual machine name. Why don't we call it vCenter 7? That sounds as good as any. Okay. And we'll set the root password for this appliance OS and hit next. Okay. Now it's asking us about the deployment size. What do we choose here? Well, the decisions that we make and have made are based on the number of hosts and virtual machines that we expect to be managing with this vCenter. As this is an upgrade, you may remember when you did the initial installation what you selected. And if you don't remember, you can use this chart and compare it with your existing system to see what we actually have. So here's my vCenter. We can go to the summary, look at the hardware. There's 2 CPUs and 12 gigs of RAM, and that matches this tiny deployment, which is what I had selected for this demonstration. Now, if you're running a larger environment, of course, you may want to select small, medium, large, or extra large. I recommend, personally, I recommend no smaller than small for your for anything in production. Okay. 4 vCPUs and 19 gigs of RAM is what will be built. But let's go ahead for this demonstration and just accept the tiny deployment. And now we'll select the data store where this virtual machine will be deployed. And we're going to give it, choose a network and a set of temporary network settings. So what's going on here? Well, remember what we're going to be doing here is building a brand new virtual machine. Okay. This virtual machine needs to be on the network. Okay, and then we're going to, in stage 2, export the data from these existing VMs. But in the end, we don't want to have to change anything in DNS. And we want any systems that rely on vCenter, if you have perhaps Horizon, if you have vRealize Automation, vRealize Orchestrator, VROps, if you have NSX deployments in your environment, that all at some point will point to your vCenter by its fully qualified domain name. We want the new system to basically take over the network identity of the old system. Now, until that can happen, we need to build a new system with its own unique IP address. Then these 2 systems will be shut down, and the new system will then be renamed. Its FQDN, its host name, will be renamed to match the old system with its IP address. So in the meantime, we need to configure those temporary settings. So if I go back over here, you'll notice that this is 192.168.1.80. This temporary will be 1.83. We'll give it the subnet mask, the host name, and the DNS servers, and we'll move on. Okay, and it says the source vCenter will be converged to a vCenter with embedded platform services controller. Excellent, wonderful. Let's finish. Now, at this point, it's going to go ahead and deploy this brand new virtual machine. So I will speed up the process. This is actually going to take some time. I'll note that at my time it's 10 p.m. We'll see what time it is when we come back. Now, of course, this is just a home lab, but it should be faster in your production environment. We'll see how long this took, and we'll see you in just a sec. Okay, 9 minutes later, and we have a successful deployment of vCenter server. Okay, at this point, we're going to go ahead and move on to stage 2. But one of the things that we want to check is what's actually happened here in ESXi. We have our new vCenter server version 7. And you'll notice it's got an IP address of 192.168.1.83, and the old vCenter and external platform services controllers are still up and running. At this point, there's been no data exported from the old systems into the new system, and you are still running on vCenter version 6.7, as is in my case. But what we'll go ahead and do here is move on to the next part of the setup. Now, if for some reason I had chosen to close the installer, I can continue the process by heading over to the new appliance at its temporary IP address on port 5480. Essentially, the exact same screen will show up and you can continue to move on to stage 2. But rather than closing this, I'll just hit continue, and we'll move on to stage 2, where we will set up this new appliance here. Okay, so let's dive into stage 2 here, where we're going to connect to our source vCenter server. We'll configure the replication between the old system and the new system. We'll figure out what data we're going to then import into the new system. We'll configure the customer experience improvement program and then finish up. So as we begin, we'll connect to the source vCenter server, okay, which we remember is vCenter01.thecoopers.lan, and it is running on 192.168.1.120. Don't forget that if your vCenter server is running in a cluster, disable DRS fully automated mode, so your virtual machine doesn't move to another host. Otherwise, you could simply point to the vCenter server that's managing the VM. Okay, we will go ahead and log in. It'll run the pre-upgrade checks and give us a few warnings about some things that might go wrong in certain situations. It'll likely warn us about the fact that we are connecting to a host and not a vCenter, and that host is being managed by a vCenter. It'll warn us again to make sure that DRS is turned off, and so on. Or not, at the very least, set in fully automated mode. Okay, so here's a few warnings. It says the host is managed by a vCenter server. It says we recommend that you deploy against a vCenter server managing the host to ensure that ESXi doesn't reside in a fully automated DRS cluster. Okay. It says that the vCenter server is deployed with an external platform services controller. After the upgrade completes, it will be embedded into the new vCenter. It also is warning us about some things relative to Update Manager. It's saying here that if there are any extensions or ISO images or baselines or anything like that that is not compatible with vSphere 7.0, that those will be removed from Update Manager. Okay, there's my result of the pre-upgrade check. And now we'll move into configuring replication. Okay, it says this is this the first vCenter topology that we want to converge, or have we done multiple before? If we've done one before, okay, then the next vCenter, if we select this one, it will actually prompt us to point to an existing vCenter server in the same SSO domain. But since this is the first one, it's going to build a new or continue with our SSO domain like so. We'll hit next. Now it's going to say, what do you want to migrate? Do you want to migrate just the configuration and the inventory, the configuration, inventory, tasks, and events, or do you want to add to that performance metrics? Now, don't forget that this was a brand new, just for the purposes of this demo install, right? We really don't have much of anything in terms of performance data or inventory or tasks and events at all. And we've got about 2 gigs worth of data to migrate. Depending on how much data you need to migrate, this might take some time at this point, but be aware of what you are pulling over or what you might be leaving behind. Now, the customer experience improvement program is not just to give VMware information about the types of services that you're using, which is actually really useful to VMware because it tells them where to focus their efforts in terms of development of new features and things like that. But you'll also notice here that we have enhancements that utilize this data for your own benefit, for vSphere Health, for vSAN's online health, for Update Planner, to allow us to be smarter about how we upgrade vCenter server, performance analytics, all kinds of different things that we can use locally for our own benefit. Okay, so we recommend using this system for collecting a little bit of telemetry. And now we're ready to complete. It gives us a source vCenter and the version. It gives us the new version of vCenter, okay, and its temporary IP address and its fully qualified domain name. After the upgrade, you'll notice that it is now going to be the same as the old one, okay. We say, yes, we've backed up our source vCenter. Don't forget to actually do that. And we'll hit the finish button. And it says now that the source vCenter will be shut down once the network configuration is enabled on the destination vCenter server. Click OK to continue. We'll click continue here. And it is going to go ahead and start by exporting that data. And by exporting the data from the old vCenter system, importing it into the new vCenter, and we'll be able to see this process start. I imagine that this will take somewhere around 20 to 30 minutes in my environment. In most environments, it will probably take a little longer depending on the amount of data that we'll be exporting here. But I'll watch the clock. It's starting at around, I don't know, 7:59 p.m., 8 p.m. on the in my time zone. So we'll see what time it is when we're done with this. We'll speed up the video until then. All right. And 28 minutes later, we are all set. It's seemingly just simply warning us that the PSC is not going to be used anymore and that we should decommission that platform services controller using a CM SSO util command according to this KB. And voila, we have a new vCenter server. Let's go ahead and have a look in here. We see the VCSA lab is up and is shut down. vCenter server is up and running, and we can now decommission the old PSC using that tool. As we look at this KB article, what we're talking about here is removing a platform services controller node from an SSO domain with multiple PSCs. So the idea is, if you have a PSC that you have removed and it was in enhanced link mode, for example, with other PSCs, you want to remove from remaining PSCs the information about the PSC that you've decommissioned. And the way that we do this here is by running this unregister command. It's CMSSO util. CMSSO stands for change mind SSO. So really it basically says we're going to unregister the platform services controller using this username and password. Okay. And it notes here that you must run this command only on one of the PSC replication partners, as the synchronization removes the entries from all other PSC replication partners. Once you've done this with the very last PSC, you can simply shut it down and delete it. And as we head over to vCenter, okay, we note that we're on vCenter 01 now. We can see all of our Active Directory identity sources and everything that we could possibly need here. than to join Active Directory or any other of the supported vCenter 7 uh, identity sources. Okay, so that's about it. We can simply head back over here now and shut down and delete this PSC. Now, one of the things you might want to do before you delete everything is ensure that your vCenter is up and running and has everything that you need it to have. So let folks use it for a while you simply keep the old PSC and vCenter around to make sure that you no longer need it at all. Okay. Once you're sure that everything is good, you can simply just delete the virtual machines. If you'll notice here, the old vCenter, if we remember it, was on the 192.168.80 IP, and the new vCenter had a temporary IP of .83. But now we notice the new vCenter has .80. So any systems that were pointing to vCenter in the past on version 6.7 are simply now pointing to vCenter today that's running version 7.0. And folks, that's the process of upgrading a vCenter appliance from version 6.5 or 6.7 with an external platform services controller to an embedded vCenter appliance running vCenter Server version 7. Well, I hope this has been useful to you. Once again, my name is Joe Cooper with VMware Education. Good night and good luck.